The top business stories live from the Sky News City studio. Consumer goods giant Unilever reveals plans to spin off its ice cream business. Hundreds of high street jobs at risk at Ted Baker's UK operations. Plus, the global era of negative interest rates comes to an end as the Bank of Japan raises rates for the first time since 2007. Good afternoon, this is Business Live with me, Ian King. No doubt today at all about the biggest business story, and that is that the consumer goods giant Unilever has announced plans to spin off its ice cream business. The company, which is the world's biggest ice cream maker, owns 5 of the top 10 global ice cream brands, including Walls, Magnum and Ben Jerry's. Unilever said it was confident that business would grow more strongly under a different ownership structure. It said a demerger was the likeliest separation route, but it would consider other options. The news came as Unilever announced a programme aimed at improving its productivity. It said this will result in some 7,500 predominantly office-based jobs being cut from its global workforce of 138,000. Well, the move follows criticism of Unilever's performance from its shareholders over a number of years. Earlier, I spoke to the company's 10th largest shareholder, Terry Smith, in the past a trenchant critic of the company, and got his reaction.
I think ice cream is a troubled category for them, so I can see why they might do that. It's not had any volume growth for quite a while, particularly in the at-home consumption area, and seems to have been prone to trading down stroke private label kind of competition, which is problematic, obviously, in inflationary times. So there's that. And of course, the ice cream's got the sort of fly in the ointment of the Ben Jerry situation, where prior management seem to have managed to buy a company without actually getting control over it, which is kind of interesting. So they've obviously got the rather serious spat with Ben Jerry's overselling ice cream products in the West Bank, and that's obviously escalated with the Israeli-Hamas situation. So I can see why they want to think about getting rid of it. And if, and we don't know for sure, they go down the demerger route, that's pretty good as well, because we can make our own mind up then whether we want to own the ice cream business or not. Yeah, we sell them, and if we want to own more ice cream, we can buy more ice cream. So I think that's generally a positive, I would say, is my take on that. On the cutting of the jobs, yeah, good. One could stop almost there, but I won't, as ever. Why do I say that? If we go back to the Kraft Heinz bid situation, when you remember Kraft Heinz wanted to bid for Unilever and were seen off very early doors without ever actually really getting to put anything to shareholders. We weren't allowed the privilege of deciding what we wanted to do on it. And we're no fan of Kraft Heinz, by the way. We've never owned them, don't like the business model particularly, but still, you know, we'd like to have had the option to think about it. One of the things that was very striking was if you looked at the productivity of the Unilever situation, so any measure you like, the easiest one is sales revenue per employee, it was miles short of what Kraft Heinz was achieving. And it's kind of like one of those questions that if we had got to the point where there was a public debate with the shareholders involved about the merits of who should run the business going forward, that's something which might have got addressed, I think, and it didn't get addressed. And I think this plan is probably a consequence of it not getting addressed.
As you say, I mean, they have had several strategic overhauls down the years, none of which really generated results. What makes you think it might be different this time? I mean, obviously, they've got a newish CEO at the helm.
Well, they've got a new CEO, they've got a new chairman, they've got a new CFO, they've got a new head of marketing. So they've had a bit of a clean sweep at the top. And notwithstanding my dislike of giving things names, they haven't come up with any things to throw at us in terms of targets for the future. They haven't sort of said, as a result of this, the margins are going to go to that, or the growth is going to move from this to this. But they basically just said what they're going to do, rather than outlining some quite probably spurious future targets as to what will occur. Because if you remember, the other thing that happened with the Kraft Heinz thing is we were given a bunch of targets in terms of margins and growth, none of which were attained, of course, not one. I mean, people get terribly excited about people naming targets. Hitting them is what we want to see. And actually, if things improve, if as a result of this, they get greater productivity, their growth accelerates because of the ice cream spin out, they get better margins and better returns on the business. I don't really care whether they go as a target or not, Ian. I'd just like to see what they achieve, you know? I've got one for you, Ian, though, before we close. We can't do this one-way questioning thing. Okay. Since we're talking about ice cream, who invented the Magnum?
Oh, crikey, I don't know. Go on.
Roger Moore.
Seriously? Roger Moore?
Serious. Roger Moore, he used to like chalk ices, and you may not be old enough to remember chalk ices, but you know, a brick of ice cream with chocolate in a wrapper, which was good, but difficult to eat, really. You always ended up with a mess, it's one way or another. And he was being interviewed by some magazine. And I think he must have misunderstood the seriousness of the interview because, along with other people that they interviewed, he was being asked, whom would you like to meet? And whereas the other respondents said things like Gandhi or Jesus, he said, Mr. Walls of Walls Ice Cream. And they said, why? He said, well, I can't work out why you just put a stick in the chocolate ice to make it easier to eat. And apparently, from that, the Magnum was born.
Don't say you never learn anything on this programme. Digital wallets, which are applications that can store digital currencies and purchasing information, are becoming increasingly common in banking and the e-commerce space. Well, that step up in use has helped Boku, the mobile payment company, whose customers include Amazon, Disney, Netflix and Microsoft, more than double earnings during the last 12 months. Pre-tax profits from continuing operations came in at $11.4 million in 2023, up from $4.3 million in 2022. Well, joining me now is Stuart Neal. He's the chief executive of Boku. Stuart, very good afternoon to you. For people who may not be familiar with you, just explain how the platform operates.
Yeah, sure. So Boku is a global network that aggregates what we term local payment methods. And local payment methods are all of those payment methods around the world that happen to not be a Visa and a MasterCard product. So what you might not be aware of when you sit in the UK is that around the world, 2/3 of global online commerce is happening using local payment methods. And so what Boku does simply is we aggregate hundreds of payment methods locally and we serve them up to some of the world's largest merchants in one slick API.
And why are these superseding direct carrier billing, which is the sort of plug-and-play version offered by the likes of Visa and MasterCard?
Yeah, so there are basically a number of reasons why these payment methods are becoming more popular. Firstly, because they're all centered around the mobile phone. So people are increasingly living their lives around their apps and super apps. They're booking taxis, they're ordering takeouts, and they want to pay for those goods and services within the app. And so the owners of those apps have created wallets. Simultaneously around the world, central banks are also getting more directly involved in driving new payment methods. So you'll be aware of things like faster payments in the UK, which is really just used for sending money. But in other countries like India and Brazil, for example, the mobile apps are now being used to make purchases online. So those transactions don't go over a Visa or a MasterCard network.
So I mentioned some of the big tech giants who are your customers. Why are they increasingly moving to these alternative payment methods? Is it because they're going where the customers are?
They absolutely are. I mean, frankly, if they want to commercialize in markets where cards only make up 30–40% of the population, they're going to restrict the available market that they can go after. So they add local payment methods to be able to offer choice to the consumer and also maximize their commercial opportunity.
So give me an idea of the growth that you've been seeing in mobile wallets over the last year or so.
So we've now aggregated up to 300 of these local payment methods, and that's been a real driver of our revenue growth. So whilst we grew over 30% as a business overall, the actual growth in the digital wallets and the A2A schemes as part of that growth was over 150%. So really, from a standing start, the wallets are now forming around about 20% of our revenues.
A2A, that's account-to-account based payments, we should just make clear.
It absolutely is. That's from one person's bank to a merchant's bank without any intermediaries in between.
And do you think this sort of level of growth is going to continue over coming years?
I really do. I think this is a long-term macro trend. It's not because Boku tells people to pay with a different method that they do. This is being driven by a pull from consumers. And therefore, I think this is here to stay. The mobile phone is at the center of everything that we do today.
Obviously, this is another nail in the coffin of cash, ultimately. How rapidly do you think the UK might become cashless?
It's an interesting question. I think, cash exists for a whole bunch of reasons in the economy. So I don't think displacing cash completely is going to happen anytime soon. But I do think the emergence of wallets is really the sort of next shift in paradigm. We had sort of cash that was replaced by electronic payments through Visa and MasterCard. And now Visa and MasterCard are being superseded by mobile-oriented payments going straight from your bank account. So, I'm not so sure it's entirely going to replace cash, but maybe in markets where cards have not been rolled out, these new payment methods will leapfrog the card investment.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. Stuart, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Great to see you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Some other business news stories for you now, and hundreds of high street jobs are at risk at Ted Baker's British operations. Mark Lyman, the Sky News City editor, has learnt that no ordinary designer label, which trades under the Ted Baker brand, has today filed a notice of intention to appoint Teneo Financial Advisory as administrators. The move is expected to result in store closures and job losses, although the scale of both is still unclear. Tesco has lost an appeal in a row with discount rival Lidl over the use of a yellow circle against a blue background in its club card branding. The High Court ruled last year that Tesco had taken unfair advantage of Lidl's reputation for low prices when it brought in the club card prices discount scheme. Well, today the Court of Appeal backs the finding that Lidl's trademark had been infringed. Drug maker AstraZeneca said today it's buying the clinical stage biopharmaceutical company Fusion Pharmaceuticals for $2 billion. The move comes as the UK's biggest company looks to build its presence in cutting-edge cancer treatments. Fusion specialises in developing next-generation radioconjugates. Those are drugs that combine a radioactive isotope with a targeting agent that seeks cancer cells and destroys them. The treatment is regarded as having the potential to revolutionise cancer care as it kills cancer cells in a much more targeted way than traditional chemotherapy, while at the same time sparing healthy cells. Now, you may not have heard of Zotefoams, but the chances are you will have been exposed to at least one of their products. Its soft and durable foams are used to insulate buildings and are found in aircraft seating, Nike footwear, camping mats, helmet liners, cricket pads, naval buoys, swimming floats, and in models, puppets and toys. Today it reported a pre-tax profit of £12.2 million, which was a record, and that was up 5% on 2022. Well, joining me now is David Sterling. He's Chief Executive of Zotefoams. David, welcome to you. Your sales were actually lower in the UK and North America. It's really the rest of the world that's been going gangbusters.
Yes, I think we're doing very well in the areas outside continental Europe in particular. China and Vietnam is where Nike do a lot of their manufacturing, so our sales to those markets are considerably up.
Now, your margins were up during the year. I assume that's largely down to price.
Actually, our selling price haven't moved that much. It's product mix, it's efficiencies, it's somewhat lower raw material prices in some areas, but getting the right product to the customer within the product mix is what's made the difference.
Now, you've two strands to the business. One, of course, is the traditional foams that you've been making for more than a century, and the other is Resource, which is your recyclable packaging business. How much are you investing in the latter?
Well, we invested in P&L terms well over £4 million last year, and in fact, in cash terms, it was more than £6 million. Big investment for a company our size, but the potential market is very significant.
What are the potential applications?
Well, we're focused right now on replacing the traditional beverage carton. So you might go down to the supermarket and buy some apple juice in a carton. That's made from multiple materials. So typically paperboard, plastic, aluminium, all in the same carton, which makes it very difficult to recycle. And we've developed a carton that is made from only one type of material and is recycled the same way as, for example, a milk carton in the UK. Just put it in the general recycling, and it will find its way into, a pellet of material that we would then reuse to make the carton again.
I mean, I took the viewers at the beginning through the many applications that your products are used in. What proportion of them at the end of their life are recycled? Can you get a handle on that sort of figure?
It's very difficult because of the vast diversity, but technically we're able to recycle all of the materials. So it depends, how they're treated end of life. We are increasingly recycling our own waste. We are using post-consumer products, post-consumer plastics in creating new foams. And in the footwear example, we have almost zero waste within our factory for those products. So big focus for us on waste and recycling in the business.
And yeah, not only at the end of life, but also in the inputs, as you just said. I mean, presumably that is something you get asked an awful lot by your shareholders.
It is, and you think it would be, front and centre for most markets. Certainly the consumer markets, customers like Nike, Decathlon, very, very focused on those. Industrial markets, less so. It's, we really have to still get an education job to do on that, and putting quite a lot of effort into not just making the materials right, but educating the supply chain further downstream on the benefits there. You would think that would be, clear to everyone in today's environment, and it's not.
That's a good point you raised there. And very briefly, if you would please, David, what about inflation? Are you starting to see your import costs easing a little?
Energy's still higher than it has been. Labour costs are going up. That's good. We're paying people the right amount of money. So those we've still got inflation there. Some of our raw material costs have come down and some have gone up. On balance, we're slightly better off than we were 2 years ago with those costs. So mixed bag, but I think profitability, certainly in the foams business, you referenced group profitability. The foams business, we are 20% up in profit, and that profit's been reinvested into the very significant opportunity for the carton business.
Just what the Chancellor will be wanting to hear if he's watching. David, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Good to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Still to come here on Business Live, we'll have a look at how the markets have done this Tuesday afternoon. Don't go away.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear and defiance, and a sense that history was being made.
We beg you to let Madeleine come home.
My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
I've seen people who believe and strive for the American dream, even in the face of disaster.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I'm based in Belfast.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Well, stocks in mainland Europe have finished to the upside this afternoon. Here's how they've ended on continental Europe. All of the main indices in positive territory. Talking points today include the French software firm Atos, which is down 18% after Airbus dropped plans to buy its cybersecurity business. Well, here in London, the FTSE 100 has also finished in positive territory, up 1/5 of 1%. You will be unsurprised to learn that the leading gainer in percentage terms is Unilever. It was up 5% at the open. It eventually finished the session up just over 3% higher. To the downside, AstraZeneca is off by just over 0.5% on that acquisition news. Outside the FTSE 100, Trustpilot has risen by 2.5% after reporting a move into the black. You'll recall we had the chief executive on the programme on our morning edition. Meanwhile, Close Brothers, the merchant bank, its shares have finished up by around 4.75% on a trading update. To the downside, as you can see, Crest Nicholson has fallen by more than 9% on a trading update. It said it will build fewer houses this year than last. Another faller in the mid-250 is Essentra, the components manufacturer. That's off 4.75% on its results. Over on Wall Street, well, the S&P 500 and the Dow have opened to the upside, and so too, after a brief wobble, has the Nasdaq. The talking point today, the big one, of course, is the chip maker Nvidia. That overnight unveiled a new AI chip, which it claims to be 30 times faster than its existing one. The shares in Nvidia, though, currently off around 1.5%. That news is thought largely to have been priced in. On the foreign exchange markets, well, it's pretty quiet just now. The dollar's up marginally ahead of tomorrow night's decision from the US Federal Reserve. As for the oil price, well, that was in negative territory this morning, but look at that, it's flipped around this afternoon. And in actual fact, that is now its highest level since the 3rd of November. That is on supply concerns. A barrel of Brent crude right now will set you back $87.37 a barrel. That's up just little over 0.5%. Well, joining me this afternoon is Janet Mui, Head of Market Analysis at RBC Brewin Dolphin. Janet, good to see you this afternoon. Obviously, the big macro story of the day has been the Bank of Japan. First interest rate rise since 2007.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon. Yes, this is a historic moment given that the Bank of Japan has not hiked interest rates since 2007. So I think the market movement is actually a bit underwhelming. The yen is down, contrary to expectation that it may appreciate. And the bond yields of Japan is down a little bit, and equity market was up a bit. So I think it is actually well expected because the Bank of Japan has been guiding the markets for a while that this normalization in policy is going to happen. And just the latest wage negotiation data suggests that this perhaps is the right moment to finally exit the negative interest rate environment.
Yes, I mean, can one definitively say, though, Janet, I mean, Japan's been struggling with deflation for decades. Is this sort of a page in the book that's been turned?
Well, I think at least the Bank of Japan judges it to be the case. It is hard to say. I think that's why they're still cautious. They're making really baby step in terms of raising interest rate just by 0.1%, and they are also very cautious in giving guidance for the future. They say they're still going to maintain pretty easy policy. So I think it will be very data dependent. But right now, the evidence is that there is wage growth, which is likely to create a virtuous cycle of high inflation and more normal economic environment.
Well, closer to home, Janet, we obviously have UK inflation data tomorrow and then the Bank of England on Thursday. What are you looking out for?
So obviously, tomorrow we'll have the UK inflation data that may provide a bit more evidence of slowing inflation for the Monetary Policy Committee on Thursday. I mean, widely expected they will be on hold anyway, given inflation is still above target. So it will be interesting to see the vote split, given that it has been a three-way split. So we are going to see if there's a bit more consensus for the Thursday meeting. But generally speaking, I think markets are expecting about 3 rate cuts this year. So it will be good to hear from the governor what's his view on that.
Absolutely. And very briefly, if you would please, Janet, we obviously get the Fed decision tomorrow. Most people assume there'll be no change. I assume that's your thinking.
Yeah, I think no change expected. Maybe they may lean a bit more hawkish because of the hotter than expected CPI data recently. But I think markets will be looking at the dot plot, the median economic projection, very closely to see if they still expect 3 rate cut this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be interesting reading nonetheless. Janet, we have to leave it there. Good to see you again. Thank you. And don't forget, we also get a policy decision from the European Central Bank this Thursday lunchtime as well. We mustn't forget them. Well, that's it from me for today. I'm back again at 11:30 tomorrow with our morning edition of Business Live. Do hope you can join me for that. In the meantime, do stay tuned. Coming up next, it's Mark Austin with the News Hour. Thanks for joining me today. Cheerio.